Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another episode of the Canton and Simeon Show. I'm joined, as you've come to expect, by Harry Simeon. How you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, all good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. You've set up in your corridor today. Is that what you've
Do
done?
you know what? I've got all these new backgrounds. I just get bored of them and I keep changing them. But yeah, you're right. This one's a bit weird, isn't it? It's like,
It looks like you've set up in like an office corridor.
yeah, I thought it was like an office at the end of the corridor, maybe. But yeah, I think
Oh, I
you're
see
right.
what you mean.
It does
Yeah.
look like you're in a hallway. Bit stupid.
Oh, I love it. I'm loving the variations in backgrounds. It's great. But no, I hope you're doing good. How's your week been? All right.
Yeah, all good, man. Can't complain. Been a busy one, sort of leading back up to club football coming back. It's always hard, isn't it, during the international break? Like I feel like stuff sort of takes longer because
Yeah.
you're kind of looking for stuff to do, and then what should be a bit of a down week becomes actually a little bit more stressful. So that's how I found it. What about you?
Yeah, it's been look, I hate the international break. There's no other way to really put it. It's just not a nice time to be a club football fan, and especially when you're writing about club football and you're producing content about club football and you're interested in international football, just isn't really there. It's really hard. But I think there's thankfully in this one, there's been quite a lot of stuff. Like the Saliba thing was quite an interesting angle to discuss. I mean, we can kick off with that. He's come up with some comments today. The one day I don't do my 8 a.m. show, so I'm trying to take one day off a weekend now to just, have a morning. Yeah. It was just getting to a point where, 7 days, 8 a.m.s, you need a day. But reported this morning that he said they, being Arsenal, are often in contact with my agent and send me messages. They watch my matches. They tell me to continue like this. The coach Arteta made his choices. That's life. I left on loan, played more matches, and thanks to my performances, I became an international. He also talked about how he didn't want to sit on the bench. He said, I'm sure I just can't be on the bench at Arsenal and be happy. I want to play as a starter. Afterwards, if I entered into the rotation as a substitute, it's not like staying with the under 23s and never being in the squad. From that, it seems that's the most positive kind of response that we've had, I think, from Saliba, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It's a bit of a weird situation. This, like, I feel like, and you and me have agreed on this in the past, that sort of the clamour around Saliba has always been a little bit too much, in my opinion. Like, yes, he's a talented lad, and yes, he's got a bright future ahead of him if he can continue on the same trajectory. But to put it into context, we haven't seen this guy play a competitive game in an Arsenal shirt. So to be so certain, the way some people are, that he is the answer and he is the one that we should be sort of pinning all our hopes on, for me is strange. I don't really get it. I wrote a piece on 90 Min, which is coming out, I'd imagine today. I submitted it this morning. I don't know exactly when it'll come out. I'll share it when it does. But I was talking about the fact that whatever way this goes now, Arsenal have won from this loan. And the reason for that is you either welcome him back with open arms. He puts behind him what happened before. He sort of gets his head down, becomes part of the squad, and you add greater depth to a developing and building squad. Or you can cash in on him and probably recuperate most of what you paid for him. And if not more, and boost our transfer kitty going into what's going to be another important summer. So I don't really see how Arsenal lose in this situation. And therefore, I don't really understand why there's so much sort of back and forth about it, as if, at the time, the way we treated him when he first arrived, that first 6 months, that was a shambles. I described it in the article as nothing short of shambolic, because it was. Yeah. But we've managed to, or at least his performances and the decision to let him go to Marseille has sort of, I think, rectified that in a way. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think that the 2020 period was just awful. Like, that period there is, and I talked about this on the Judges channel the other day, was just probably the worst handling of a player that I can remember, to be honest, at Arsenal, especially one that you've invested so much money into. And I get that Mikel Arteta wasn't the coach that bought him, or wasn't necessarily the one that wanted him, but he's been able to integrate players that he didn't sign, like Martinelli, and seen them flourish. And why that didn't necessarily happen, or the decisions weren't made in the right way with Saliba, I can't get my head quite around why. I know that there was issues after the French Cup final, but to then follow that up with not sorting out a loan, which seemed like the obvious choice, especially when you see the benefit of hindsight, how beneficial that 18 months away from the club has been for him now. It just doesn't make much sense. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. The loan was great. I have my reservations. I would have rather seen him go to an English team, but he wanted to go to France, and it's paid off. And definitely either he will come back as a player that certainly can fight for a spot, or as someone that, will move away and will get a very sizable amount of money for him. I too wrote a piece this week about a comparison statistically with Ben White, because kind of there's a lot of, obviously those two are the ones that you get brought up because White came in, took his number, £50 million invested. And I feel like a lot of the people that are, I don't want to necessarily call it a cult, but there is a cult following behind Saliba, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
White is the one that always takes the fall for this. And when you look at him defensively in the Premier League, his stats outstrip Saliba this season, playing against harder oppositions, better forwards, and better oppositions week on week. Interestingly, though, and something I was going to revisit in a later piece, is that Saliba's passing and progression is actually better than Ben White's in Liga. Now, it might be because of the difference in the league, and because obviously Marseille dominate much more of the games in Liga than what Arsenal do in the Premier League. But in the same way that's the style that Arteta wants from a defender, he fits the profile. So surely if he returns, he'd be a huge asset to what Arteta's looking to build at the club.
Yeah, and I think he could be an asset. My only reservation about the William Saliba thing now is, has too much happened between him and Mikel Arteta? Has the damage that was caused by that decision to essentially leave him out of the squad entirely without having sorted out a loan deal, which, might not all be in Arsenal's might not all be at Arsenal's door. There may have been an issue with, because we know that we tried to loan him back to St Etienne, don't we? There could have been an issue at that end as well. We don't really know why it is that failed, but I guess that's my worry with Saliba. Can he put behind him the rejection almost that he faced when he first returned to the club? Can he see what Mikel Arteta's doing, and does he believe in it? Would he be understanding of the fact that he isn't just going to waltz into that central defence, and he could find himself playing on the bench or starting from the bench sometimes? I think all of those things are dependent on William Saliba and how he feels. I think Mikel Arteta can try and convince him, but judging by the way Mikel Arteta's spoken about him in the past and the fact that he did allow him to go on loan again, you wonder if Mikel Arteta is kind of in this place where he's like, well, now it's on you and it's up to you. You want to come back, you want to prove yourself, you want to give it a go, you want to be part of this. We welcome you with open arms. But if you don't, then we can bring in a hefty fee for you. And at a time where Arsenal's financial results are not very good, and at a time where we know that we're kind of, I'd say we're more than halfway through the rebuild, but we still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Bringing in that money and almost rectifying a mistake that was made under the previous regime. Because whatever way you look at it, mate, spending £27 million on a player that then goes on to not play for you in the next 2.5 years, that's a mistake. So can we rectify it by bringing in the money? I don't know.
Do you still think it's a mistake, even considering it was like a previous regime of Emery and Raul Sanyehi that were here, obviously, and now aren't? Do you still look at it as do you think it's a mistake that you can put on Arteta and Edu, for instance?
No, because I don't think as a manager you should be obligated to use somebody that you don't feel is right because of a mistake that somebody else has made. And look, going back to if it is a mistake, it might not be in the long run if we manage to either sort of get him back in the team, get him working well in the squad and being an asset for the club. And it won't be a mistake if we manage to sell him and get back the money that we spent. So either way, that's why I say it's a win-win situation for Arsenal now. But at the time, it was a mistake. We were in desperate need of improvements within that squad, and we shelled out £27 million for a player who wasn't going to play for us and then didn't play for us for another 1.5 years after that. So it was bad business at the time, but we can save it. We can rectify it in a way that we can't, for example, rectify spending 72 million on Pepe, because we'll never get anything close to that back. But with Saliba, we have that opportunity.
Now, the reason why we did the show wasn't to discuss Saliba, but of course, with the news coming out this morning, we couldn't really avoid it. The focus was meant to be and is going to be now on the running and this period, because thankfully international football is over, and we can look ahead to 10 games that we've got to try and qualify for the Champions League. Now, to kick it off, we've obviously got Palace, but I want to know kind of how confident you are with a trickier run-in compared to our rivals that we can and ultimately will get Champions League football.
I've never been as confident as some that we're going to get it. And every single piece of work I do, every sort of show I go on, people always like, particularly at 90 min, all the lads are always like, oh, come on, it's done. And especially a few weeks ago after we beat Wolves, everybody was like, it's done. And after Villa, it was done again to them. And throughout, I've said, no, it's not done. There's a long, long way to go here. And Tottenham have improved a bit of late. And, Kane and Son are firing, which scares me a little bit. So it's not done and dusted. I'd say I'm probably 50% confident at the moment. And I know that's lower than a lot of people, but I just think that we're 1 or 2 injuries away from being significantly weaker.
Yeah.
Those abject performances we've criticised United for and Spurs for, we're capable of them as well. And the fact that we got to play some of these teams that we're in direct competition with, and we don't have a very good record against the traditional big six, that scares me and that worries me. So I don't know. How are you feeling, like percentage wise? How are you feeling about Champions League qualification?
Yeah, look, I think that we've got a great chance. And I think if we aren't to get it, it would be a big disappointment considering kind of the effort and the work that's been put in to get us into this position. And, yes, there's been some fortune in the sense that other teams have dropped points in this race that we probably didn't expect them to drop as many points as they have, Manchester United especially. But, we can't, there's nothing to say that the only reason we're here is because of other teams. It's like, that argument doesn't stack up because we have put in significant progress on what happened last season. We've won massive games. We've taken points in big games. Doing the double over Wolves is not something we've done for 9 seasons. We won away at Aston Villa and at home against a side that are looking at Arsenal, to be honest, as a side that they want to try and overtake, to match and then get ahead of. And, we opened up that gap to them this season even wider. We obviously beat Spurs at home earlier on in the campaign. I think beyond Liverpool and, some of the games that Man City have dropped points in kind of out of a little bit of luck, we deserved to get a result against Manchester City on that opening day. And I know that it means nothing because we didn't get any points from that game. But, the progress that you saw in that fixture, we lost the game against Liverpool in the space of 10 minutes of a game in which, we were the better side for the most part. I think that there is so much to look at this season of where we progressed and moved forward to where we position ourselves now, and the benefits of some of the changes in the recruitment setup and the strategy behind that, the non-negotiables, the ruthlessness with the squad, the overhaul of players that have been moved on, the decisions that have been taken with players that are huge personalities like Aubameyang, and we've moved on benefiting from him not being here, whether or not whatever you feel about Aubameyang, Arsenal have been a better team since he's been moved on. And that's just the fact of where we are right now. And if Lacazette gets injured, we'll probably look back with the benefit of hindsight then and maybe talk differently about it. But for now, we are benefiting from him not being here and him not being in the team because our goal tally's gone up since he's left. So there is a lot to be positive about. But yeah, I am confident that, this form will continue. The issue for me, like you say, is if we do get an injury to a player like Lacazette or to a player like Partey or to a player like Saka, any of those three, and you look at and you go, wow, we're going to struggle to really replace them because I don't necessarily trust Pepe to come in and give what Saka gives week in, week out. I don't trust Eddie Nketiah or Gabriel Martinelli to be frank in a central role to give us what Lacazette's doing. More so Martinelli to, lead that line with Smith Rowe and Saka around him. But that's an incredibly young forward line. I think it's an average age of like 2021. So it's mental. And if Partey moves out, we've got Lokonga, but Partey has been probably our best player in 2022. So Agreed. It's going to be very tricky if you lose anyone like that. So it's that depth that should be addressed in the summer, probably.
100%. And the other thing as well is when we talk about the improvement and why so many people are feeling more positive, like at this stage, we've got 13 points more than we had at this point last season, right? So that's significant. That is a massive difference. But outside of that, it's, for me anyway, the connection that we're feeling with the team, the buy-in that a lot of us have with this group of players, the confidence we have in them, the likability of the whole group. I feel like there's a connection developing. I've felt it for a while. I think some people needed a bit longer to kind of feel it with Mikel Arteta. I think that is developing. It's getting better. The atmosphere at the ground is much better than it has been in recent years, in that people are behind the team and with the team in the difficult moments. And I just think that it's the whole package that kind of highlights Arsenal's progress, rather than just, it's easy to go, oh, we've got more points than last season. But it's deeper than that. It's more than that. And if you're not an Arsenal fan, you probably wouldn't really feel the other bits. And so I think that we're the best people to be able, not me and you specifically, but Arsenal fans. But Arsenal fans specifically are the people that will be able to tell you whether there's been progress or not. Because a lot of football, for me anyway, is emotion. And if I feel the right emotions, that's half the battle. And I think that that's a really important part of supporting a football club that can be missed if you're looking at it from the outside. And to feel engaged and to feel bought into and to feel like we're moving in the right direction in all those different areas is what gives me more confidence than the points tally.
Yeah, the points tally is, at the end of the season, based upon my predictions, very favourable, but that is only based on the most optimistic predictions you've probably ever seen from an Arsenal fan. But it's weird, isn't it? Because you look at those 10 games, and you look at Palace, you look at Brighton, you look at Southampton, you'd think we have to get 9 points from 9, really. If we're going for top 4, we've got to try and win all those games. You look across the rest of the season, we have to try and win at West Ham. I think that's a really tricky game. We have to beat Manchester United at home. We can't afford to lose against Spurs. Like, I would take a draw in that North London derby, to be honest, because it's important we don't allow them to catch up. So it's more important, I think, not to lose that game than more than anything. The Chelsea game, I look at as a bit of a bonus. I'm not expecting a win from that, but if you can get any points from that, that's big. And then you've got the other games against the likes of Leeds and Newcastle and Everton, of course, on the final day. There's one game I think I'm forgetting. Or maybe I'm not, actually. I think that is all 10. And again, those are games that you'd hope that we pick up 9 points in across those 3. So when you're looking at them and you're thinking you've got 10 games, I'm only really looking at 2 games, being Chelsea and Spurs, that I think that we'll struggle to get all maximum points from those games. That's probably unfair maybe on West Ham. I think it will be a battle at West Ham to get all 3 points. But Manchester United, I just feel like an absolute mess. And I feel like we should get 3 points against them at home. I look at the West Ham away game as a harder fixture than the Man United home game. But arguably less important because Man United are, of course, in the race more so than West Ham are. So I think that pressure and the expectation is for Arsenal to win at least 7 of their last 10 games. Is that a realistic expectation?
I don't think we need to win as many as 7. I think if we win 6, we'll be in a really, really good position. You got to remember that we naturally are going to kind of sort of panic about this, and we're going to assume that there is far less margin for error than there is. I mean, I don't expect Man United to go and win their next, 8, 9 games on the bounce. If they do, then they'll deserve to finish in the top 4. But this is why we have to take this week by week. And it's why I'm trying not to get too caught up in the whole, well, if we win X amount of games, because for example, we play Crystal Palace on Monday night, and we're looking at that now as a must-win game. Now, I don't want to say that it isn't, and I don't want to say that I'll be happy with anything less than 3 points. But if Spurs and United were to drop points before that, I don't think they will, but if they did, or one of them did, the level of pressure on that game is relieved ever so slightly. And so I know people say, focus on your own job. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Well, no, that's not the way it works, because as long as you stay on top of those teams going forward, if Man United and Spurs both win, we need to win. Simple as that, because we're in the driving seat. If they don't, then we should still be aiming to win, but there is a little bit of margin for error that I think we're going to need if we're going to get over the line in this. So that's why I want to take it week after week and see how it goes. There will be weeks where we have the advantage. Tottenham and United, I think, both have to go to Liverpool. That's a weekend that we got to capitalize on. Equally, that we go away to Chelsea, which is a game they'll feel that they can take advantage of. It's our game in hand, but it's a game they'd expect us to drop points. It's going to go back and forth a lot between now and the end of the season for me.
The North London derby, whilst yet to officially be rearranged, the rumour is it's going to be reset for a third game before the end of the season. So between our games against Leeds and Newcastle, Spurs then would have to play Liverpool the weekend before them playing Burnley at home. I think that favours us more than it does them, because obviously they'll be coming off the back of that Liverpool game. And with 3 games left of the season, with 9 points still to play, there's an argument that, we could have opened up, say, a gap by that point, you'd hope maybe, and that the pressure will certainly be more so on them than it will us by that point.
Yeah, I think although nobody wants to have such a big pressure game, sort of sandwiched in between fixtures at the business end of the season, when we all know that our squad is quite thin and all of that stuff, I would say that there is a chance, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there is a chance that we can, if we continue on the right trajectory and we continue on the right path and they drop some points, that it could become a non-event for us, in that we could lose it and still have enough in the tank to get over the line. So being at the end of the season, it gives us time, doesn't it, to kind of consolidate our place, or at least sort of increase our chances of making it. So yeah, I'd rather sort of be in our position than theirs, for sure. It was always going to happen though, wasn't it, Tom? They were always going to hold that game back until a later point in the season to brand it as the big Champions League blockbuster and plaster it all over Sky for weeks building up to it. Always going to happen. It's just football though. We've got to live with it.
Yeah, and it was always, as you say, it was always going to happen. We knew it was going to happen, but I think of all the times they could have put it, I think I'm fine with it being there. I would have rather have had it later on than now, because say if you lose it now with 9 games left, your confidence is dented for those 9 games. Whereas with just 2 games to go, you can compartmentalize that. You can focus on just having 2 fixtures, win them both, and you position yourself as best you feasibly can. So I think it's definitely worked out for the best for us. We're going to jump into the chat box now for the last 15 minutes or so of the show. So please do throw those questions into the chat box. Of course, do drop a like on the video as well. We do these shows as best as we can every single week. If you want to see the next one, you'll be able to go and find that on the Chronicles of Aguna channel, which is, of course, Harry's channel. So make sure you're getting a subscription over there, because you're very close, Harry. So close to 20K still. It's a bit of a slog towards this part of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, it always feels like you look at it and you go, oh, I might get there quite soon. And then you just watch that subscriber count just sort of slowly pull towards that mark. It always, whenever you get towards a milestone, it feels like it drags, doesn't it, when you get to that point? But
it does indeed.
Hopefully.
But no, you'll be there in no time. So if you aren't subscribed already, people, please make sure you do. I'll make sure to leave a link to that in the description. Peony Ween says, why don't people press the likes? It's a great question. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, but the people that are watching that haven't certainly do have an answer for you, and they'll be able to answer that by pressing the button indeed. Van Soeka says, which strikers should we go for? Very simple, very easy, but plenty of answers available.
Oh, this is a tough one, because I seem to change my mind from week to week on this. The more I delve into a player, the more I think, yeah, you're the guy. And then I move on to someone else when another link comes up. I still think, for me, when you look at what needs to be done at Arsenal in the summer, and I think there are a few positions that we need to maybe not change in terms of the first choice, but we need to add depth to. I think that we got to be, I don't want to say conservative in what we spend, but not be stupid. Like, I like Alexander Isak, right? He's a player I really like. But when you think about how little he's done in front of goal this season and the price it's going to cost to bring him to the club, I'm starting to feel like we should probably steer clear of that. I think that Darwin Núñez is the one for me that I'm on at the moment. Not because he's the finished article, but just because of what he can become. And I think that he gives you a lot of the things that Mikel Arteta looks for in a striker, but with the goals too. And I think that's hard to come by. In Lacazette, we got someone who gives you all the off the ball stuff, all the kind of build up play, but doesn't give you the goals. With Núñez, he gives you that. He gives you the ability to run in behind, because he's quite quick across the ground and a powerful runner. He'll run channels if you need him to. But also, if you're struggling to break someone down and you need to whip a ball into the penalty area, it's got a physical presence to cause problems. So he ticks the most boxes for me at the moment. And being at Benfica, I think it's a transfer that is achievable for a not going to say it won't be cheap, but it won't be stupid money.
Yeah, I feel like the numbers that are being quoted around like 80 million euros, I think are a bit hyperbolic,
no
to be honest. And I think Benfica will probably look for something closer to the 40 million pound mark, probably to get him out of the club. Harvey says, how will the World Cup delay our signings in the summer and the outgoings? Now, the World Cup is obviously being played in the winter. And I know that a lot of players, obviously, this is an interesting question because immediately your mind goes, well, no, why would it? Because it's in winter. But actually, if it's a player that you're looking to strengthen in depth of your side, and a player knows they're going to be joining Arsenal to, say, compete with other signings, and they're in a position at their club where they're starting week in, week out and, positioning themselves as best they can to get into their World Cup squad, there could be some reluctance to then come and, fight for a place rather than being guaranteed a spot ahead of the winter.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I think that players will be mindful of the World Cup, will be mindful of the fact that they want to be in the public eye going into that competition to stand the greatest chance of being selected and being picked and featuring regularly in the competition. But this whole World Cup is just weird to me. Like, I watched the draw yesterday and I was buzzing because, when you get all those sort of like montages of like great moments, it gets you going again for the World Cup. But I can't get away from the fact, and I know a lot of people have issues with other sort of issues with regards to Qatar, and I get all that. I'm not really clued up enough on it to sort of have a really strong opinion either way. But what I would say is the thing that puts me off of this World Cup is the timing of it. The fact that we're going to stop a season, go and have a World Cup, and that we're not going to be able to enjoy it in the sunshine. To me, it's weird, and I can't I don't really know how it's going to play out, and so I don't really know what impact this is going to have. It's a hard one to answer, but a good question.
It is a good question. Manu asking another one. How do you think the manager will keep the players sharp for the end of the season? Take every game at a time mentality, or more like a war against our rivals, if that makes sense? It does make sense, Manu. We understand it. What do you think?
I think you got to focus on every game at a time. Yeah. Sometimes, life is what happens when you plan for the future or while you're planning for the future, and you can't get caught up in that in this. Like, you got to win your games from week to week. You look around and you see what's going on elsewhere, and that might impact how you then sort of go forward, but you can't look beyond the next 7 days at this moment in time. I really don't believe there's any other way to do it right now. So, the war, I think this squad have got that mentality anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's building, it's developing. And I think particularly at Emirates Stadium against Manchester United, I think we'll make it come across as a war anyway. So, I think that bit comes a bit more naturally.
Yeah, I do too. Let's have a look at Creambone, who says, do you think that the crap that's been thrown at us lately about celebrating has galvanized this Arsenal team?
I think it's helped create a bit of a siege mentality. It's one of those where, like, I think that fan bases and clubs are united and at their strongest when they feel like everybody's against them. And it does feel like that with this whole celebration police thing. We've seen other clubs do more. We saw Liverpool go and cheer a 2-2 draw against West Brom in front of the Kop end. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember there being that much talk about it at that point. So it is starting to feel like that again, but that's a good sign, because the last time I felt like that was when we were successful. So to be in that position again, I think is a positive. And I think it's, I think it does galvanize the team. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I think that there is kind of a bit of, not that they're villains, but they've been written off, and this team's been written off for so long that they feel like they have something to prove. And that's when you give a team with nothing to lose at the start of the season. To be honest, whilst I don't think there was a sense of nothing to lose, but I don't think there was an expectation that we were going to get Champions League. So in that sense, if we were to get it at the start of the season, or get it, as I say, at the end of the season, it will be such a huge plus and such a big kind of middle finger to all the doubters that really did look at Arsenal as a side. I mean, you look, even Gary Neville now is talking so derogatory about Arsenal. It's ridiculous. And that people want to write us off, and people are still talking Man United about being the favourites. Oh, no, I used to really like him as a pundit, to be honest. I can put my rivalries aside when I listen to someone talk about football, to be honest, when they're talking things in a neutral perspective. And he used to actually be quite complimentary about Arsenal. And he used to say stuff like, if it isn't Man United, I'd rather it was Arsenal, kind of getting there. And whilst that doesn't sway me to like him anymore, his analysis used to be quite good, but it just seems of late lazy. Really lazy journalism.
It's with him, and listen, as a player, I despised him. I really did. I grew up at the heat of the Manchester United Arsenal era. I despised him. And then as a pundit, I sort of started to gain respect for him because I thought a lot of what he spoke was sense. But now I feel like, and not just him, but a few people at Sky Sports are going down the whole, well, I've got to say something that can become a 60-second clip for social media.
Yep.
I don't know if that's coming from production. I've been in the situation on the radio before where a producer has said to me, I know that's your opinion, but can you slightly tweak it for the sake of the debate and the argument? So it does happen. But it loses value.
How did you react in that situation?
Yeah, it's a weird one. And I feel like Gary Neville is doing that now. First, top 4 was impossible. And now if we finish top 4, well, that will be the peak and we can't go any further. And it's like, come on, man, just sort of be a bit more. You pride yourself on being balanced, then be balanced.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not with Gary Neville. He's got such a, he's got clout. Like, he's in a position where he's appreciated, or rather was, by many people as one of the top 2 pundits in the country alongside Jamie Carragher. And you think about being in that position, you shouldn't have to create these touchstone moments, and it is a frustration. There is a part of me that maybe just thinks that it's he's frustrated about where Man United are. He's frustrated because Arsenal didn't really look to be a threat, and now Arsenal have certainly, in my mind, overtaken Man United in where they're at. And the future for Arsenal in the comparison to the future of Man United, just it's night and day. Like, you look at what Man United are trying to achieve, and it's where's it going? What's going to happen with the manager situation in the summer? Are they going to be able to invest because they've had these issues behind the scenes? Obviously, they've had the Greenwood situation this season as well. The ongoing Ronaldo controversies about whether or not he's the right player to have. Can you get rid of him? He's still got another year on his contract. It feels like a moment where Arsenal can take advantage of the upheaval at Man United, and if they don't do it this season, it will be a bit of a missed opportunity not to do so. Tommy says, would love to see Xhaka get the respect he deserves before the season ends. He is having a great season, is giving his all for the club. Time for fans to forgive and show him some respect. I think Xhaka has been, really solid. I mean, there's obviously been games this season we quickly forget. The Manchester City away game, for instance, the giving a penalty away against Man City again in the home fixture. He's had some difficulties, but he has been, so good that when you look at the summer and people were talking about a central midfielder, the fact that it's so hard to identify a centre mid that actually upgrades upon what he's giving us right now is a testament to how strong he's been this year.
Yeah, I've always backed Granit Xhaka in the sense of I've always felt that he's got a rougher ride from the fans than he deserves. I've never sat here and said that he's perfect. We all know that he's not. We all know that there are certain shortcomings in his game, but you're right. He's been incredibly consistent, not just this season. I think last season as well. I think for a couple of seasons now, he's been one of our most important players. And you immediately notice the difference when he's not in the side. In terms of the respect thing, I feel like the damage has already been done between him and the fans. There are a section of Arsenal fans that would never give him the praise he deserves, never give him the credit he deserves, and will never warm to him because of what happened in the past. I was involved in a piece of work that involved Granit Xhaka, and he was speaking. It's going to be out soon, and I've sort of seen it and sort of offered some feedback on it. But it's an interview that he's done, and it's really good because it gives you an insight into the way Granit Xhaka is wired as a person. And I think if you get that, then you would start to naturally not be so bothered by some of the things he says, because you'll just get that that's part of his character. So I'll share that with everyone as soon as it's out. It's not my interview, but it was something I was asked to give feedback on, and I found it really insightful into Granit Xhaka. So yeah, I think when people see that, perhaps the opinion might shift a little bit more in his favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or it'll go the other way and everyone will hate him.
Or it'll go the other way, which is usually the way that it goes. We'll finish on one more question. Let's try and scroll up and find the one that I was looking at. Captaincy. The Sox guy says, how do you feel about Ramsdale as a possible captain? And ultimately, who would be your captain for next season? If
I don't like I don't like goalkeepers being captains as a general
Same.
rule. I want someone who can.
Even Buffon.
Yeah, there's some special cases where the goalkeeper is
Yeah.
just like an outstanding goalkeeper, a professional, a experienced head, whatever. But I think that for a captain to do his job properly, he needs to be able to kind of understand what's going on in all areas of the pitch. That's what, in an ideal world, I think a centre midfielder or a centre back who can watch things unfold in front of him is the best place to be a captain. There are obviously exceptions to that rule. I think in the modern day, we've seen a shift towards clubs naming their best players as captains as opposed to the natural born leader kind of guy, like the type that walks around beating his chest and shaking people up when they're not doing their job. So I think we've seen that shift in football in general. For me, I wouldn't give it to Ramsdale based on what I've just said. I think it's going to go to Kieran Tierney, just based on the fact that he is now taking the armband when Lacazette goes off. I think that is a telltale sign. But I would probably give it to somebody like Martin Odegaard, just because I think he's a great role model for the club.
Yep.
I think he's a good professional. I think he puts a shift in. Nobody can accuse him of sort of swanning around the place. He's quality. He's in the middle of the park. I just think that he's the right guy to sort of represent the club moving forward. Tierney's good as well, and I wouldn't have an issue with him getting it. But I just think Odegaard can become a bit more of a poster boy for the club, and that is something that clubs do think about now when it comes to marketing and commerciality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think that Odegaard would be my number one pick. I think that I like someone being in the middle of the field as well. I know that Kieran Tierney is another strong candidate for a lot of people, and you can see the reasons why. I just think that maybe him being slightly on far left, the influence on the rest of the team, is it going to be a strong? And he's not that vocal, actually. Like people, you think of him stereotypically, he's not that vocal. He really isn't. He's not someone who screams and shouts at players all game. There are instances where he does throughout the game, but he's not a consistent kind of shouter. Whereas Odegaard really is. And if you go to the games, you can hear Odegaard constantly talking to his teammates, constantly speaking. And I think that being someone in the middle as well, especially in the midfield, is a really strong place. I don't necessarily think that the armband is the be all and end all with the leadership in the team. Look, there are a number of players that will be leaders, and I think that whoever gets it will have players around him that are just as good at leading the team forwards from wherever they are on the pitch. So whereas we used to talk in the past about Arsenal lacking leaders, I don't think we can say that anymore. And I think there are a number of players that have not only been brought in as leaders, but certainly players that have been developed into leaders as well. And I think that's, again, a credit to what the manager's instilled in terms of mentality with the team. Harry, thank you so much, mate, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time as always. If you want to check out, as I say, next week's episode, that will be on the Chronicles of a Gooner. So give yourself a shout out, mate.
No, thank you for having me, man. Always good to chat with you. And as Tom said, we'll be doing it on my channel next week, Chronicles of a Gooner. You can find it on YouTube or all major podcast stores. So thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure. And fingers crossed the next time we speak, we'll be talking about another 3 points.
Absolutely. Do drop a like on the video before you leave. And of course, I'll be back tomorrow morning with the 8 a.m. show. No 8 a.m. show today. It was my day off today, but you still got another morning show, technically. It was just a little bit later. I will see you very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal. Come on, Leicester. Bring home a result for us, please. Please.